Thanks for joining us, Kara. I think we have just a straightforward agenda for this evening. I hope it goes pretty quickly. So we have a break before the 7 o'clock, although I don't think I'm going to make the 7 o'clock. Anyway, we did table the first policy at our March meeting. And Kevin, if you'd like to take it away from here.
Okay.
And talk about that.
All right, give me 1 second, please. Okay, good evening, everyone. So we have 5 policies for consideration tonight. As Rachel had alluded to earlier, we had one policy, 9273, conflict of interest. And at the time of our last meeting, we had decided to table this one, and we agreed to come back and include this one in the next meeting. And so of these 5, we have 5 policies here. And then I think this team would be happy to hear that this actually concludes the updates and recommendations for the 9000 series of the bylaws. And so the next one is methods of operation. As Rachel had mentioned earlier, the next few policies are very straight to the point. And so I will just get started. I think the meatiest one is 9273, conflict of interest. And so Rachel and I actually had an opportunity to review this just a couple of days ago. And I think we agreed that part of the frustration of the group was there were 2 different things we were looking at. The way CABE had recommended them to us, it was version 1 and version 2. And I think as a team, I think the committee was struggling with, quite frankly, liking or appreciating both recommendations. But after revisiting this, part 1 is conflict of interest civility code. I'll go through this slowly and then I'll come back. And what you will notice is we just felt like this language itself was almost aspirational, like this is what we would want and hope for every board member as they participate in meetings and workshops. And then the second one, which they had recommended as version 2, we felt like this was more protocol and kind of norms for all of our meetings. And so the recommendation after Rachel and I had met was we actually keep both. The first part will serve as a code for the board. And then the second part would serve as meeting protocol or norms for all of the meetings. And so I'll stay on this page first and give you an opportunity to kind of what I'm calling the norms or meeting protocol. This is a quick read, so I'll leave this up here first.
And to add to that while you're reading, generally I think less is more when it comes to policy, but I think, our bylaws are kind of our board, part of our professional development in a way. So I think, it doesn't hurt to have more in the, especially when it comes to ethics.
A question, just a general one, and there's nothing here that's bad. Everything here is fine, and it is all aspirational. Mm-hmm. Here's the question. We can't make anybody do any of this. None of it's a rule. We can't add a criteria for participation in the board that's not in state statute for board member election. So we can pass this, but are we not deceiving people by thinking it's actually enforceable? Because quite clearly it's not. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean,
Joe, if we approve the dean, like maybe someone would have to be referred to the dean's office.
Could be. Could be. By the way, I'd give my IT for in-school detention right now to get me out of my office. None of this is bad, and we can pass it. But I mean, are we?
Why? I still go by why. I think sometimes we just, and maybe I'm wrong, Rachel, but I understand that sometimes we do these things to just sort of set a tone and an atmosphere for how the board operates.
Mm-hmm.
Which alone could just be the justification for doing it. I mean.
Mm-hmm. True. And bylaws really are only guidelines.
Right. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I will take this time and scroll back up to the top, because this is part of the original language the group was.
Well, before we leave that, Kevin, can I ask what number 8 means? Everyone will contribute. There will be no observers. What does that mean?
So I think the expectation is everyone will be participants.
I get everyone will contribute. I get the words, but I understand the words.
Do we like this better?
Everyone may contribute.
Should you contribute?
Should contribute. That's a good one. Everyone should contribute. There will be no observers. It sounds like there's police at the door.
It almost sounds a little jargony. Jargonish. For lack of a. I'm inventing words this evening.
Yeah, I feel like everyone should contribute. Yes, I like that better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is the group okay with me just taking this out and not having a strike through there?
I think that can come out.
I am. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So if we like this idea, I will also take this out.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is how CABE had recommended the code. And originally they had a version 1 and version 2. If we're accepting the bottom and modifying that as our norms, then at the top would be something that would kind of guide the expectations of board members.
Are there any other questions or discussion on this policy? No. Okay. I'll ask for a motion to bring this to the full board.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Joe De Silva, seconded by Kate. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. The next policy for consideration is 9300. It's an optional bylaw, but I think you could also make a case again, and I think this is not just about the board members who are here, but the board members that might be joining later, and begin to think about the kind of transition, what that looks like, and trying as part of the onboarding process, walking new board members through what the expectations are.
Is it me, or does this not seem to be like CABE's signal issue? This was 100% of what they did at the orientation, or 85% of what they did at the orientation. Is this really an issue? This level of what?
Not an issue, Joe. I can tell you, there was a sentence in here that we had modified and felt like it was more appropriate. And so the board shall rely on the superintendent of schools to recommend policies for adoption and to administer policies enacted by the board. Such policy shall be broad enough to indicate a line of action to be taken by the superintendent, meeting a number of problems and jobs. I'm sorry, maybe, so Rachel, this was not the one that we had adjusted.
It was the second sentence there.
Yeah.
The policies and policy amendments may be initiated.
Here it is. Right, because initially it was only the superintendent, but the reality is sometimes you get recommendations from the board, which has happened in my short time here. Recommendations from community. You know, the superintendent or the board are under no obligation to adopt recommendations from the community, but it doesn't mean we could not consider them.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. It just seems that this is one of Cabe's hobby horses,
Got it.
Which doesn't seem to be an issue here. That, you know, I mean, I've only been on the board for a year. It just doesn't seem like anybody here is trying to micromanage anything. I mean, I'm just wondering if this is a solution searching for a problem. That said, there's nothing wrong with the policy.
Okay.
I like it. I think it explains what our job is.
I certainly don't object to it. I just think, you know, it's stated in several other places. So I just, you know, if they want to make it more explicit, I have no objection.
For instance, Kate, how would you make it more explicit?
No, I wouldn't make it. I'm saying if they want to state this in this kind of explicit fashion, I'm totally okay with that. I just think it's sort of implied by, you know, other bylaws that govern the board already. It just is extra.
Yeah, I think it's very succinct and
It doesn't hurt.
It does hurt, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. I mean, it says what it says, and it's not hard to understand.
There you go. We dumbed it down just a little bit for people.
Okay.
Rachel, do you want a motion?
Sure, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Did it go to the board?
Moved by Joe, seconded by Kathy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed. Next one.
After our last meeting, I feel like this team is a little disappointed. I'm not bringing back some tough ones for you guys to wrestle with.
All in good time.
Yes, I know. That's right. That is for sure. That is for sure.
You two are way too excited about the next meeting. I can tell already.
This one's a real easy one, but perhaps the committee might want to consider it. And this is about workshop sessions. The board may schedule special meetings for the purpose of conducting workshop sessions to provide its members with the opportunities for planning and thoughtful discussion. Topics for discussion and study will be announced publicly. Board of Ed workshop sessions will be conducted in accordance with the state law on public meetings.
Is there anything significant about the nomenclature change from work sessions to workshop sessions?
So their language was workshop sessions. I'm glad you asked that question, Joe, because we put in workshop because that's the language that we use here. And then we just kept sessions because we didn't think workshop was appropriate to just leave as workshop.
Just curious.
Yes. Outside of that, yeah, because we struggled with the same very question you just raised.
Any other thoughts, comments, discussion? Okay. May I have a motion to bring this to the full board as presented?
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
So moved by a lot of people. Is that
Catherine jumped in.
oh, and
That's okay.
moved by Catherine, seconded by Kate. How's that? All those in
Sure.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Policy 9313, administrative regulations, formulation, adoption, and amendment. Let's get here. This one is also short, straight to the point, but just a reminder about the board's role with regulations. Also making it very clear if they want to request to see them, there's an opportunity for that. So I'll just give you an opportunity to do those.
So can I just ask a clarifying question here?
Sure.
Where it reads at the top there, the board does not adopt administrative regulations unless specifically required to do so by law or unless requested to do so by the superintendent. Does that necessitate that we adopt administrative regulations if requested? Or is that optional based on the language underneath, which says that if it's inconsistent with the policies adopted by the board already, that we don't have to approve it as is.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Kate. I'm not really sure what this means. And so I can see if we have a policy in front of us that's, almost just by the nature of the policy, the regulations are almost built in. And so, or there may be a law that, a law that requires us to pass a policy, but we also requires board involvement in how it's operationalized. I don't understand the part though, unless requested to do so by the superintendent.
Query?
The board has voted on some regulations in the past. I mean, one of them very near and dear to my heart was the AIS sibling preference, right? So that is not a policy, but it was a regulation. And I'm not privy to the conversations that the chair and the superintendent had at the time, but that came to a vote several times.
Would be a perfect example. Absolutely.
Two questions. Number one, should we make this consistent with the change we made to the earlier one where a policy can be suggested by the board, the superintendent, the board, the public, the community, whatever that language is, as opposed to this, which seems to bring us back to Cabe's original language from the other policy proposal, where it was basically only the superintendent. I mean, I'm not sure that they shouldn't probably be consistent, number one. I don't know if they have to be. It just seems to me that this is inconsistent with what we just amended the other one to do.
Well, that was policy, and this is regulations that follow the policy.
Is there a distinction that there's a critical distinction there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't think,
Joe, unless you're saying you would like, which I think would really change the policy itself, but if you wanted to say, if we want to go back to the other one and say you'd like for the public to have an opportunity to also make recommendations about policy and regulations, and that's a different, you know what I mean? If that's,
I don't care. I was just checking to see if consistency was important here.
Okay.
If there's enough of a substantive difference between policy and regulation, I'm fine with it. And I think to jump in on Kate's question, I don't think we can adopt a policy that requires us to adopt the superintendent's proposed regulation, because I don't think we can legally bind a future board to an action. Things that are required by law are required by law by legislatures higher than us. I don't know that we can bind ourselves in the future. So I think this language is fine, but I don't think it's binding on us that we have to do something the superintendent says, because I don't think we can take that discretion away from a future board by operation of establishing a policy.
I understand. And so Rachel, with that example about with that example for the magnet school, I'm assuming, was that action? Was that board action where you guys actually voted on it?
Yes.
We did vote on it, and it was because the superintendent came with his recommendation and we didn't agree with it, basically.
Got it.
we were divided as to that piece of it. And Rachel can attest to the many hours spent on that particular subject.
Looking forward to just regular days to be frustrated about school stuff again, Kathy, and not dealing with this. Yes.
I know. Someday we'll be back to normal, whatever normal is.
Right, agreed.
I had forgotten.
I'm not sure what to do about, that first part, Joe, where, unless specifically required to do so by law.
I think we can leave it as it is. I that's just more of an observation. I don't think it could be interpreted in the future to require us to pass a regulation recommended by the superintendent unless it was also required by some other law. Just because I don't think we can bind a future board. That was more observational than I think we have to modify the language.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't think a board 10 years ago could require us to do something now. Let's put it that way.
Are there any other thoughts, questions, discussion? No. So are we ready to move this to the full board? Or, we don't have to adopt this either. Was this an optional one, Kevin?
It was. It was optional to consider. Or we can share with the full board and get some feedback.
That's true. We can discuss it with the full board. So I guess I'll ask for a motion to present it as is to the full board.
Mm-hmm.
So moved.
So moved by Joe. Is there a second?
I'll second.
By Kate. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay. Policy 9326, taping and recording of board meetings. Again, I think we are all set here. But again, if you wanted to have this in your board packet for the future board members, it might not be a bad thing to have in there. And so this is just saying that our board meetings will be memorialized, taped and recorded, retained for at least 1 year, et cetera.
Question, and this may be functionally moot because the joys of YouTube preserve everything on the interwebs forever. The recording shall be retained for 1 year. Does that comply with FOIA? I'd want to check that before we adopt that.
Yeah,
Of course, we would still have the minutes though, Joe. Well, we required to share.
I understand, but a public record is a public record. We now have two public records. We have the video of the meeting or the recording of the meeting, and we have minutes. I'm not suggesting that we can't do it. I just want to check and make sure that we run that by Kim or somebody or one of the FOC.
Yeah, because Joe, it does say you're making a good point here. Under number 4 under another version to consider, it says any recording of Board of Education meetings shall be made available to the public under the Freedom of Information Act. So if it seems kind of contradictory to have.
But what about number 3 at the top? The recordings are not to be considered part of the minutes, and the minutes are the ones that are FOI, correct?
Well, no. All public records are FOIable. Making them part of the minutes requires them to be available in a certain period of time and have the video be approved by us.
So which
is why you don't want it part of the minutes, because otherwise we'd have to approve the video.
Yes, but yes, that's true. But are you questioning the 1 year?
I'm questioning whether we can ever destroy a public document. We may be able to establish a policy that allows for us to purge a public record after a period of time, and that may be okay under FOIA. I just want to make sure before we adopt the policy that we're not adopting something that is going to get us in Dutch later.
Correct. So do we have to table this one?
So yeah, let's do we need a motion to table?
Make a
motion. We postpone this to the next meeting.
Thank you, Joe. Seconded by Kate. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And we'll reach out to Kim and see if she can weigh in on that for us.
That was quick.
Yes. So bylaws are concluded now, finally, and we'll figure out where we left off.
Yes, circling back to the 1000 series, which was community relations. I will confirm with Cabe. The last time we were in front of these policies, we were under the impression that we were done with the recommended policies, but I will share an update with this team prior to our next meeting, and then have a new slate of policies for us to consider.
Thank you so much.
No, you're very welcome.
Thanks everyone for being here. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Joe.
Second.
Second by Catherine. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we are
stand for the Pledge of Allegiance like we do at every meeting. And before we sit down, to me, I will hope that we will stand and just have a moment of silence for the officer that was killed down at the White House on last Friday. I think his name was Officer William Evans. We just want to have a moment of silence because there's so much going on in the country right now. Okay, we're going to do the pledge first. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United
States of America,
and to the republic for which it
stands
one nation
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh.
Thank you all so very much. And I think it's very important that we acknowledge things as they happen, because the way that things are going on, we never know what will hit our door. Okay, so we're gonna move on. Kate, will you do the roll call?
Certainly. Joe Britton is absent. Rachel Chalesky is absent. Kate Canetta here. Gladys Cooper.
Here.
Lauren Daly.
Here.
Okay.
Joe De Silva.
Here.
Catherine Hodgson.
Here.
Here.
Yeah. Okay.
Rich Janelli.
Here.
Kathy Molinaro.
Here.
Al Russo. I do not see him on here. Amy Spallino.
Here.
Okay. So we have 3 absent. Come on. Okay. Next, we're going to have the recognitions. Mr. Watson.
Yes, you just needed to unmute, Ms. Cooper. Sorry about that.
Oh, sugar.
So this evening, Ms. Cooper, I have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Kim Dioria. She is one of our teachers at Danbury High School, and recently is a recipient. She received the Harvey Milk and Sylvia Rivera Award for challenging discrimination related to gender identity and sexual orientation. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry for the noise in the background. And so we are excited to have Kim here this evening. Dan Donovan is not able to be with us this evening. And quite frankly, I can't tell you how excited I am to introduce you to the board and to the public. And so Ms. Cooper, you might recall a couple of years ago, we adopted a Board of Ed policy, equity and diversity policy. The last line of that policy, it's embracing our diversity through inclusion, creates an environment that leverages diversity and creates schools where students, families, community members, and employees feel valued, welcomed, and supported so that students and staff can perform at their very best. And I think everything that you're going to hear about Ms. Dioria this evening demonstrates that she's an absolute embodiment of our equity and diversity policy. And so I'm just looking forward to reviewing with everyone while Kim has received this prestigious award. So Kim is honored and humbled to be nominated by a Danbury High School colleague. And she stated, "I want to thank my DHS colleagues who have listened to me talk about my vision for a safe LGBTQ student body and school environment. In her ongoing mission, Kim has provided resources for GSA and Diversity Club members, teachers, and administrators to advocate for LGBTQ issues. GSA members have always spread the positive message to embrace inclusiveness, diversity, and culture. Kim has created a safe space to discuss barriers and to celebrate achievements. Kim is currently a board member at GLSEN, Connecticut, and held a position as a policy coordinator. Over the years, Kim has attended numerous workshops, training, and conferences to keep her work current, and spends a tremendous amount of time following bills, policies, and language regarding the LGBTQ student community. Kim's room, I hope she's okay with us sharing this, room D277 is always open to students who seek comfort and guidance of a true professional. Please, when you get a chance to see Kim, and we are so glad to have her on the call this evening, please join us in congratulating her on this well-deserved award. And Ms. Dioria, would you take a moment to just talk to us about this award and some of the work you've been doing at the high school?
Okay, so I kind of wrote a little tiny speech.
All right.
So here I go. Hope will never be silent. All young people, regardless of sexual orientation or identity, deserves a safe, supportive environment until which we achieve their full potential. Harvey Milk. We can no longer stay invisible. We should not be ashamed who we are or show the world who we are. Sylvia Riviera. Good evening, board members and community participants. I hold the position as a family consumer science, humanistic, multicultural educator at Danbury High School for the past 8 years. I am honored and humbled that I received the CEA Harvey Milk and Sylvia Riviera Human and Civil Rights Award for challenging discrimination to gender identity and sexual orientation. Over the years, our GSA club members have presented in front of Nobel Peace Prize laureates, created workshops to educate teachers and administrators how to create safe school environments at the SUNY system for 2 years in a row, and one of my students being a key speaker at the state capitol to denounce discrimination based on sexual orientation. I have provided the queer youth community skills and resources to advocate for themselves. You have a voice, use it, and the world needs to listen. For my colleagues and admins, when you are needed an explanation or resource or to navigate parents or students' needs, I am always available. As I have this platform, this is what I request from you. To be visible, create a safe space in all Danbury public schools. Respond to anti-LGBTQ language and behavior when it comes occurring. Teachers take actions for those teachable moments. Stay current on language and issues regarding policy at state and federal level. Educate the LGBTQ visible curriculum and inform other educators and school leaders to do the same, including inclusive history, sex education, and athletics, starting in pre-K through secondary education. Advocate, provide opportunities for students to improve our school community climate, and listen when the students respect students when they ask for the preferred names and pronouns. And I am blessed that I was given this opportunity over the years to attend professional development, which led me to work on the board with GLSEN and being the policy coordinator. I want to thank my colleagues at DHS for the support and respect to our LGBTQ community. Be present, mindful, and brave. Peace.
Thank you, Ms. Dioria. Thank you so much. And thank you, Ms. Cooper.
Mrs. Cooper, may I make a comment, please?
Yes.
Kim, I just want to thank you personally for doing this work in the school community and in the larger community by doing that work in the school community. This education is really important. There was an incident over the weekend at a coffee shop in Bethel where it's run by a woman who's part of the LGBTQ community.
I know where the coffee
it's
shop
a safe
is.
space, and some folks went and took a pride flag down from there and took it away and burned it, and then brought the remnants and left them on the steps of the coffee house. So even in our communities, which are largely very inclusive and working hard to create greater inclusivity, we're still running into this kind of behavior and this kind of action against people for just reasons of misunderstanding, I would hope. But I really appreciate the work that you're doing to try to bridge those gaps in our community and to help everybody learn how to embrace differences and work together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the board, I would like to say thank you for being a part of our Danbury community and within our school system. And thank you for everything that you're sharing with our students. We are lucky to have you within our system. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Congratulations.
Now we're going to move down for the public participation. Kate, would you read the statement, please?
The board welcomes public participation and asks that comments be limited to 3 minutes. The public may offer objective comments of school operations and programs that concern them. The board will not permit any expression of personal complaints or defamatory comments about Board of Education personnel and students, nor against any person connected with the Danbury Public School System. Due to the unique nature of the COVID-19 crisis and the limitations of technology, members of the public who are Danbury residents are invited to send brief comments and questions via email in advance to dps_public_BOE@danbury.k12.ct.us.
Thank you, Kate. Kara, do we have any comments for tonight?
Yes, we do. We have 6 comments I will read.
Okay.
Okay. First comment is from Oswaldo Chin. Dear elected school officials, my name is Oswaldo Chin, and I write in support of the school budget and to thank you for all the hard work you all do. I also share the frustration of many parents who wish the schools would fully open, but I am also aware of the great job our teachers are doing despite the lack of resources from our city and state. Thank you for a great job. I support our teachers and our school board officials. The second comment is from Maria Matos. Hello, my name is Maria Matos. I am the program manager for LEAD, Latinos for Educational Advocacy and Diversity. First, I would like to thank the board for all of the hard work you are doing, especially during these trying times. As you might know, LEAD has been one of the coalition of groups working to bring another high-quality education option to our city. But today, my testimony will not be about that. I am writing today again to reaffirm LEAD's commitment to work together with our elected officials in order to bring more equity and representation for all. As we have mentioned before, Latinos now make up the majority of the students in most of our schools, and our ability to recruit and develop Latino teachers and administrators must now become one of the top priorities of the board. We need our students to have people in the classrooms that not only look like them, but can also serve as role models. LEAD is willing to help in any way we can as we work together on this goal. LEAD would also like to continue to remind the board, as it seeks a new superintendent, that the Latino community in Danbury is severely underrepresented, that recruiting and well-qualified Latino education leaders would be a great advancement for true equity and representation for our city. Finally, I also want the board to know that most of our job will be to bring educational opportunities and activities to our community. We invite board members to join us in our efforts to bring more people to the table and work for the common good of our community. We have partnered with the health department to bring access to vaccines and education to our hard-to-reach populations. We have an Earth Day activity on April 24th to teach our youth the importance of civic engagement. If you are interested in learning more about our organization and ways which we can partner, please contact us. Again, thank you for your continued service, and we look forward to cooperating with you. The next comment is from Kathy Snow. I am writing tonight as I understand there is a good chance students at the high school will not be back in school full days in the fall. My understanding is this is due to cafeteria capacity at lunches. This is absolutely unacceptable and in my mind, a cop-out on the part of the administration and the cabinet. The cafeteria space issue has been known for a very long time, and not having a solution in place is deplorable and a failure to our children. We have all heard over and over how the high school is the biggest in the state. Doesn't that also mean it has a lot of space? There is a huge cafeteria, outdoor courtyard, auditorium, black box theater, stadium, and multiple gyms. I cannot believe there is not a plan in place. Have additional lunch waves been added? What about lunch in lieu of the flex period until we get through this? What about a lunch wave for students who are fully vaccinated? What are the capacity numbers if the tables are moved? These are young adults and I believe can handle eating without a tabletop if necessary. Have you thought about the effects on students of only attending school for half days? Yet again, students would be denied the ability to participate in after-school activities or sports as they must leave school grounds at lunchtime and would need to use their own transportation or be driven back to the school. How is that fair and equitable? Many students rely on activities and sports to assist in getting them into college as well as to obtain scholarships, not to mention the positive mental, physical benefits of after-school activities, which I think we can agree on are at a critically low level. How can you be okay with students not getting the chance to participate in these activities? The administration and cabinet need to make a full day high school a priority. Come up with a solution so that the high school students can go back to school full days in the fall, as you have done for every other grade in the district. Do not give up on these students as it appears you are. They are worth your effort. A concrete plan has to be worked out now. The next comment is from a Christina Sweeney. Dear Dr. Sal, Mr. Wilson, DPS administrative team, and esteemed members of the Danbury Board of Education. During what has been a most challenging year for everyone, and particularly educators, I would like to express my gratitude for the building administrators, faculty, and staff at Rogers Park Middle School. Although distance and hybrid learning has been difficult, the administration led by Dr. Zelita has been communicative and responsive throughout the entire year. Every school day, Dr. Zelita posts a thoughtful and beautifully edited, I may add, morning video that clearly outlines expectations as well as upcoming events and announcements for the students. Similarly, the teachers have been wonderful despite the enormous challenges they face teaching to two groups of students online and in person simultaneously, not an easy feat. The teachers at Rogers Park are hands down an incredibly talented and committed group of educators. They have done their best to build connections with their students and help them learn under very difficult circumstances. Rogers Park Middle School is a diverse and vibrant community of learners, and aside from the restrictions required due to the pandemic, I could not be happier with the educational experience my son has received over the past 2 years. And I would like to give a huge shout out to the incredible musical theater program that the school offers. Unfortunately, I am extremely disappointed to learn that the City Council has decided not to fully fund the Board of Education's approved budget. This shortfall only continues the tradition of the City Council not funding the needs of the schools for the past 10 years, resulting in a school system at its breaking point. With everything that happened this year, it has become exceedingly clear how critical our schools are to our families and the value they bring to our community. Thank you for your time and for working so hard on behalf of our children. And the last comment is from another comment from Oswaldo Chin. My name is Oswaldo Chin. Yesterday, I wrote an email to the Board of Education thanking them for such good job you are doing and supporting the proposed school budget. That was before I had watched the City Council monthly meeting where Mayor Cavo presented the budget proposal. Today, I write to make my support even stronger for the Board of Education and for our teachers. But I would also like to question how Mayor Cavo not only insulted our children and our teachers, but deceived the citizens of Danbury by saying that he was giving an increase of $9.8 million to the Board of Education, when in reality, the actual increase was $1.25 million. I was disappointed, but not surprised. The question is, why should we do something different when he knows the same strategy worked and allowed for over 20 years? After seeing the actions of the mayor and former of the former and current mayor is clear that they do not care about our children, and the only thing they really care about is giving tax breaks to real estate developers. For so long, we have asked and requested the mayor and city council to properly fund our public schools. We must call them for what they are. If they do not listen to us, we must work to beat them on the ballot, because they are people who will not do anything different. In closing, I would like to encourage the Board of Education to spread the word to the whole city to inform and make sure that when November comes, we remember that at the ballot box. Sincerely, Oswaldo Chin. So that was the last email that came in, and refreshing now, and that is it.
Thank you so very much, Carol. We're gonna move on down the agenda. The consent calendar. Kate, would you do the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approves the items on the consent calendar, exhibits 21-52 through 21-53, and the donation as recommended.
Second, Madam Chair. It's Joe.
God bless America.
Gladys, you're on mute right now. Mrs. Cooper, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Just stop me. I'm sorry. Motion made by Kate, seconded by Joe. Is there any question concerning the consent calendar?
I do, Mrs. Cooper.
Yes, Mr. Janelli.
Just a point, I'd like to make sure that we write a letter acknowledging the donation from the Colonial Subaru. It was very generous.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Janelli.
Oh, I did this so good.
Seeing none and no other comments or questions, Kate, can you do the roll call, please?
Certainly. Kate Canetta, aye. Gladys Cooper.
Hi.
Aye.
Lauren Daly.
Aye.
Joe De Silva.
Aye.
Catherine Hodgson.
Aye.
Rich Janelli.
Aye.
Kathy Molinaro.
Aye.
Amy Spallina.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion so carried. Now we'll move on down to,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I have got through the technology issues at the meeting, and I will also vote aye.
I did this.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Al, sorry about that. Did not see you.
Bye.
okay, sorry, Al. Okay. So we'll move on down the agenda to the education staff representative. Erin, is she on? Dr. Zalita?
Good evening, Ms. Cooper.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good. I have your weekly or your monthly positive share out here. If I've got my screen going correctly. You all see that?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
Today, I'm going to show you how to make a milkshake. So first you need some strawberries and milk and one of these. And so first we're going to put strawberries. By the way, the cream, first you need to clean them so you cannot be sick. Put them in. And so fresh. So now when you're done putting the strawberry, you put the milk inside the strawberry. There we go. And my mom is going to blend it. And that's all.
I hope you enjoyed that. I was pretty impressed by that last little girl. She just made me smile. I had to watch her over and over again. But this is what our students are doing on the day-to-day. Our teachers are working hard to make them have the most interactive and effective education. So thank you for your continued support.
Thank you.
Thank you for always being here with us to share those wonderful things that are going on in the different schools. Thank you again. Do we have any of our students reps here? No?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, Board of Ed members, cabinet, and community members. Thank you for allowing me to represent and speak on behalf of the Alternative Center for Excellence. 8 students participated in the 53rd Annual Danbury Cultural Commission Poetry Contest. Students from grade 9 through 12 submitted 30 of their original works. The ACE graduation ceremony will take place on Thursday, June 10th at the Broadview Auditorium at 3 p.m. A special thanks to Eddie Thomas and the hospitality of the Broadview team for allowing us to use their auditorium to be able to provide a graduation experience for our students, families, and staff. Planning for the ACE Renaissance Fair is underway. This day of student engagement is being led by English teacher Daniela Esposito, social studies teacher Kyle Tricola, and our art teacher Savannah Hasty. English teacher Melissa Lasky and social studies teacher Rob Melillo successfully completed a humanities collaborative project to address oppression of marginalized groups in our society with the English 3 and U.S. history students. ACE will be hosting a Spring Career Day with virtual guest speakers to present careers that serve the community. This special day is being organized by Diana Donato, DJ Jimenez, and Laura Blake. ACE would like to announce our March Student of the Month Award winners, Larissa Medeiros and Tyler Scherer. ACE would also like to publicly acknowledge and congratulate our most recent Students of the Week, Ramir Rivera, Larissa Medeiros. Keep up the good work. Thank you all for allowing me to share the great things happening with our ACE family this spring. Stay safe, everyone, and remain ACE strong.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have Jake or Rebecca? Okay. We'll move on down to the superintendent's report. Mr. Watson? Oh.
Sorry, Ms. Cooper, I'm having a hard time unmuting tonight. I'm not sure why.
I don't know.
Okay, give me 1 second. Good evening, everyone. Ms. Cooper, if it's okay with you, I would like to move around the order a little bit and ask if Dr. Martin's on behalf of Principal Donovan in the high school speak to our plans for high school graduation. I also wanted to just briefly interject and say we had a great meeting on Monday night at Citywide PTO when we've certainly been getting requests from family members throughout, over these last several weeks. Community members families have been asking for some questions about the high school graduation and trying to get an idea of what type of graduation festivities we're going to have. In fact, there was even a request on Monday night asking the families if they can play a role in the decision or inform the decision in some way. And so I just thought I would just open with that, as Dr. Martin's going to share some news tonight.
Good evening, and thanks very much for letting me cut the proverbial superintendent report line. So I appreciate that. I will say that we really want to make this celebration of graduation an important special event for all of our students. And so we all are wanting to make that happen. We also want to make sure that it's a safe event and that we're following CDC recommendations and that we are taking care of our students and their families. And so we've identified 3 plausible options. And I should say that we fully intend to survey the students, the seniors, to make sure that their voices are part of the decision-making process. The stadium can hold a little under 3,000 people, and our senior class at this point is 834. And so just having our students there puts us at almost the capacity that's recommended, maintaining 6-foot spacing, even in an outdoor event. And so with a faculty of 240, that also complicates things. And so the first option that we've identified that will be put forth before the student body is to have all of the seniors only graduate on the field, and we would live stream the event, as has been done in other large buildings. Certainly there are pros and cons to that, as there will be with all of the options that we've identified because of the situation we are all in. The second option would be to graduate over a series of 3 nights, cutting the student body into thirds and allowing them to bring 2 guests. The last option would be to do something similar to what we did last year, but having done that last year, we've identified some ways that we could make some improvements and to make it a little bit more exciting for our students. We would be able to allow students to choose a time similar to how we have parents sign up for conferences. We would use a similar system. And students could identify when they wanted to elect for their graduation time slot to be. So they could, go with the buddy, or that would also permit us to have cars with guests, and we would stage a photo op area in front of the stage as we did last year. And then that would allow us to do that over 2 days. We've identified the 10th and the 11th as possibilities, because if we take that option, we need to build in 2 rain dates, which would be the 12th and the 14th. So the 3 options would be only the students live streaming for everybody with the link to be able to watch, doing it over the course of 3 nights. Students would be permitted to have 2 guests, or we would be able to do a kind of souped up version of what we did last year with a graduation parade. So those are the 3 things that we think we would be able to do safely with our students and still be able to celebrate this monumental occasion.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Da Silva.
Thank you. Dr. Martins, real quick question in terms of the first option. Are we discussing the concept of the students on the field?
Yes.
Or in the stands?
So we would be able to bring them, we would be able to have a little bit of flexibility with that. As we discussed it, we would be looking at probably positioning them on the field as we have been and trying to maintain that sense.
So if we put them on the fields, is it contemplated that there's anybody in the stands?
No, with the first option, because of the way that, because there's also the entrance and the exit, and also the laboratory use. So all of these things had to be sort of taken into consideration. But with the capacity that's been established for the stadium being about 2,850, if we do that with the 6 feet, that brings us down to a third.
Is the capacity of the stadium including students on the field?
So I think that the capacity of the stadium also accounts for students walking in and walking out. And so that becomes problematic. Anybody who's seen our typical graduation, it takes several rounds of the song to get everybody onto the field. And so maintaining the
Okay, this is a meeting.
would be challenging.
Yeah, it took a couple of rounds of the songs. When I did it 33 years ago, there were only 600 of us. So I can't imagine what it's like with 850. Thank you.
Oh, Megan, I have a question for you. Nice to see you, by the way. With that first scenario, would we be allowed to be there in our capacity on the field?
Yes.
Yes. It would be a normal thing just with no parents and no guests. Okay.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions to Megan? Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Megan. And so, Ms. Cooper, if it's okay, I'll go back to the original order that we had and talk about the 21-22 school planning.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I know there were some questions this evening and some points raised as part of our public participation, and certainly understand those comments and frustrations. Dr. Sal and I and some of the cabinet members and board members, quite frankly, had an opportunity to hear firsthand from our parents at Monday's citywide PTO meeting and get feedback on their desire to have to make sure in-person learning is a priority for the 21-22 school year. I just want to reiterate, if it has not been clear already, that is definitely our position and Dr. Sal's intention to make sure K-12, all of our kids are back in school for in-person learning. And so that planning has included reviewing again. And when I say again, we have done this several times as a cabinet, as an administrative group in district. At the various phases, we were hoping to get kids back in school, but making sure we have reviewed the availability of every single room. We have blueprints, plans for every single classroom in this district. We have worked with our architect to see how we can maximize classroom space throughout all of our schools and throughout all of our classrooms. We have narrowed down the classrooms that cannot occupy more than 18 to 20 students, which is the number which has pretty much been our max out with the minimum 3-foot distancing. And then for those, what we are identifying as kind of problem area classrooms, Courtney and her department, and frankly, it's been really hands-on on all of us, have gone back to these schools, working with principals, working with our data department, looking at every single classroom, seeing if there's more furniture that we can remove from the classrooms, seeing if there's any available space in those classrooms before we seek out other opportunities. And I just wanted to speak briefly about some of these other areas in the district and even outside of the district that the Danbury Public Schools is considering to make sure we have a space for every kid, all of our kids next year when we come back. And so I know everyone is aware of the fact that we have federal monies coming to us by way of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds. Those priorities have been clear on how we're supposed to spend those monies. And certainly that is going to guide our decisions in terms of how we're going to, address the learning loss and mitigate, some of those learning losses throughout this last year. But our number 1, 2, and 3 priority is to get kids back in school. And so that could mean that we are leasing venues in our community that are not historically a school setting. And so we are, once again, because it's not as if we have not explored these things before, but now it's a very different opportunity. Now we have different monies to help support our reopening of schools. And so we are investigating with a very different purpose and certainly more resource as part of that investigation. And so we have a commercial opportunity in town where there's enough square footage to occupy, quite frankly, hundreds or to 1,000 students. It would come at a significant cost. It would mean considerable additional staff for Danbury Public Schools, and then it is also requiring a multi-year commitment. And so as you might imagine, we are also exploring commitments that do not require multi-year commitment. And so we are continuing to look at, we have some schools, neighboring school buildings and school facilities that are no longer operating because of enrollment. And so we are exploring those. We've gotten feedback from them. Some of them, none of these schools can take all of the classes that we need covered, but we certainly are finding that we can piecemeal some here and piecemeal some at another site. And so just to give the board and the community an idea of just what we're dealing with in K-5, because, you know, we have talked about our reality relative to overcrowding with the 3-foot minimum as the guidelines, as they stand now, the 3-foot minimum guidelines, we would have approximately 89 classrooms, K-5, additional classrooms we would need to find district-wide. And so, you know, we have, and this is spearheaded, you know, our investigation and, you know, continuing to try to find a safe venue for our kids and for our staff. And so we recognize that this means is going to mean increased staffing for the district. It's going to mean additional money spent for leasing. But we are adamant and do it to make sure we do anything that we can to get our kids back in school next year. So I certainly wanted to start with providing that update for the board and for the community. And I also understand, I'll just pause because I understand there may be some questions about that.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. DeSilva.
Kevin, just curious, is it contemplated that distance learning will be offered as an option for students in the fall if families want to avail themselves of it?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Joe.
Will it even be allowed?
No, it's a great question. And so one, we are moving forward as if it is not an option. Okay. And as we understand it, there are going to be monies afforded to our local RESC. And so for us, it's Ed Advance. And so there may be a space in which Ed Advance will be providing services for families who choose to be taught remotely, which would free the districts up, but that has not been finalized. But again, we're moving forward with, you know, the expectation is we're going to have all of our kids back in school for in-person learning, and we want to make sure we can, at the very least, have that available for every kid that chooses to do so.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions from board members? Okay, Mr. Watson.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cooper. So I'm relatively, Ms. Cooper, pretty calm. I'm going to try to remain calm as I talk about the budget. So we have as the board and the community might recall, originally a $13 million budget ask. And that ask, if the board and the community might recall, that ask was prior to being aware of the ESSA funds that were going to be afforded onto our community and, you know, throughout districts, throughout the state and the country. That $13 million, after reviewing with the board, with the finance committee, we had decided that it was appropriate after reviewing the conditions of the grant itself and kind of what was eligible under the grant, that it was eligible to move some of those asks and some of those non-reoccurring costs over to ESSA 2 and ESSA 3. And so given those realities, that $13 million ask was reduced to $9 million. And so that was a reduction of $4 million. And so our ask to the city of Danbury was then $9 million. At least as of yesterday, my understanding is there's a recommended budget to the council and to the city of $1.25 million for our operating budget. And we certainly understand the position that the city is in, you know, kind of given the financial straits and just the realities of this last year. There are a lot of people still recovering from COVID. But it doesn't change our position as a district because we continue to have enrollment growth. That's part of our Danbury reality. We continue to, you know, there's other realities that we still have in play are an annex to Ellsworth Elementary School that will require additional staffing, 4 to 6 teachers, additional staffing at that building. And then, you know, I've heard early projections for a new school associated with Danbury High School that can cost $3 to $5 million. But both of these projects will look to be launched in the 24-25 school year. And quite frankly, we are concerned that if we don't have an increase in allocation from the city, and during the 24-25 school year, and soon in the 25-26 year, these grants would have sunsetted. We would have needed increased allocations from Alliance, which we anticipate and we hope certainly that those increases will be increased by that time period, and they will stay with the recommended levels before the governor had suggested that they freeze. But if they remain at the levels that they were initially scheduled for, that is promising. If we continue to get our updates from other federal revenues, like Title I, et cetera, that is also promising. But the allocation from the city is going to be necessary in the 25-26 and beyond school years. And our concern is, and as part of our opportunities to try to educate the community about our budget realities, we have historically, our city has not made a contribution to the budget where has been a double-digit increase. And so if that is going to continue to be our reality, we need an incremental increase in the education allocation over these next several years in order to match the enrollment concerns that our demographers have shared with us over these last couple of years. And we've outperformed the demographers' recommendations, as Joe continues to mention at most of our meetings. And so we're really going to need to partner with the city on this. It's part of my fault because I feel like we have got out into the community and try to educate the community. But we also need to get, and meet with the city, meet with the council, meet with the mayor, and have more meetings with them. And so I think that also needs to be a priority for us moving forward, so that everyone is on the same page about the Danbury Public Schools reality. But I know Courtney has some additional information she'd also like to share with the board and the community. But I just want to make sure I opened up with that because we really need to make sure we're all on the same page for Danbury youth, Danbury staff, and make sure we can get the best out of all of our students. And I'm really concerned right now about where this positions us for the future. And quite frankly, it creates a lot of, for future administrations in the mayor's office, it creates even more frustrations and concerns for future administrations moving forward. So hopefully we can find some middle ground, if not this year, continue to find some middle ground in the subsequent years.
Are there any questions for Mr. Watson?
I do, Ms. Cooper.
Hi.
Yep. Kevin, does it make any sense, since in all the meetings we haven't really made a presentation during any of our workshops, or specifically had a workshop, finance workshop, where the council members were invited? Does it make sense at this point? I know the timing is tough and it's late, but to give the council as a whole an overview of our presentation prior to the other meetings you're going to have with the mayor, which is more one-on-one, and then with the education committee, so that the council as a whole has the opportunity to see all of the information that we provided to everybody, as opposed to it being funneled back just by the education committee. I ask that only because of what I call misinformation relative to how the mayor yesterday presented the allocation to the city, where I tend to think that many people would think we're made whole. So I just ask, do we think that we can get a workshop, finance workshop? Do you think it would be worthwhile, and invite specifically the council meeting to attend to see what their input is and to further our education to this body?
Yeah, so Mr. Ginelli, I'll answer you in this way, since we're doing pretty good with time this evening. I recall Joe Britton chairing the meeting on behalf of the Facilities Committee with city council members, with legislators, with the mayor at the table, and we had an opportunity to educate, right? And so Kara was excited, Sal was excited, everyone in that room was excited. Of course, it required an investment, it required a commitment, but everyone was excited about this new energy that was coming to Danbury. With that same excitement, I feel like we need to come back to the table again, right? Once again, find an opportunity to educate everyone and match that excitement with investment, right? Because the reason why folks were excited, because we were investing in Danbury. Yes, it was a great idea, but it was about investment. But the investment also requires resources. And so if there's an opportunity to educate and continue to inform people, I think it would certainly be a worthwhile evening for us.
Okay, because I agree with you. I really don't understand how we can go ahead with the huge investment without supporting the infrastructure to support that particular investment. So perhaps after this, we can collaborate and see if we can contact whoever and amongst ourselves to see whether we can set up a quick workshop to bring this to the front of the council people. Because I really think the complexity of what we're proposing and the fact that we've got this multi-year forecast, which really shows things so vividly, I think that's an important issue. And as I said before, the community, the mayor, the council is excited about the academy, as they should be. However, I think we have to make them aware that it's hard to do just that and not fund the infrastructure getting up to that. And then, of course, needing a commitment to fund the new facility itself, which is none of those numbers were ever presented in any of our projections. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Janelle.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Silva.
Well, it's just a question and a comment. The question, I think, goes first to Courtney. Just can you confirm ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 monies are not to be used instead of regular allocation? Am I correct in that regard?
It's not intended to supplant your existing operations. And I'm going to just kind of walk a fine line. So the governor's proposal was to provide in the budget a look at what that, at least the ESSER 2 at the time funds were, while also freezing alliance funds. So that would necessitate anything that we were going to do in the future, to have to be afforded with some portion of the ESSER monies. Now, it has to be grant applicable. We have to apply for it. We have to draw it down, just like any grant, that's afforded to us. So ESSER 2, the allocation has been given to us as an $11.2 million allocation over the next 3 years. It's got to be spent. And we're required to submit a plan imminently, within a week and a half, for use of those funds. In light of, the situation of, people living in the pandemic and many, many years of, investment not necessarily keeping pace with our enrollment and needs, the board, or a portion of the board, decided for us to submit a modified request, which I'll go through just very briefly in a presentation. We talked sort of in depth at a workshop, and we provided some materials to the board that showed specifically what line items. So I think in terms of columns and rows, we offset with those ESSER funds for things that we hadn't done yet. Technically, they're needed in the operations, like guidance counselors and social workers, right. And ESL, not teachers, but a SIAP coach, for example, some curricular supports. It can be, we can still qualify under the ESSER funds, but we also wanted to make people aware, per Rich's comments, of what that impact would be, because these are basic needs for our budget in 5 years when the ESSER money goes away.
Thank you. I'll leave it with this, and I agree with everything Rich said. I think educating everybody would be good. Here's the thing. This is $2.5 million in the last 2 years based on $18 million worth of asks. No matter how you structure this, this is an abdication by the mayor. This is an embarrassment of a budget. He is falling down on the job. The city of Danbury should be embarrassed that this budget was proposed. I recognize the financial challenges going on right now, and I don't think it's probably, we had a reasonable expectation we were going to get the whole $9 million. But $1.25 million based on where we are now, the challenges we seek, and the challenges our students are facing after not being able to be in school for the better part of 12 months, this is an embarrassment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Russo.
Thank you. I understand the distinguished board members' sentiment. However, this is not city revenues are down. People are struggling to pay rent, and not everybody can pay their taxes. I understand the need for a big ask and the need to respond, but this is not the year. And you know that. Thank you.
Okay. Courtney, may I ask a question? Does the 1.25 cover our contractual increases for next year?
No.
No, it would necessitate cuts to the budget.
Thank you. Thank you. I have nothing further, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay. Kate?
Courtney, I just had a quick question. If you could clarify something for me. At the budget presentation last night, Mayor Cavo referenced a surplus that was going to be applied to our stream. Can you give me some insight as to what that was meant by that? Because I know we had some minor cost savings as far as transportation this past year, and we always have like a floating number for health insurance. So is that what he's talking about? And was it $3.5 million?
So yes, thank you, Kate. So the funds that were surplus funds from last year, unspent funds, were due to mainly three things. One was transportation, because we got some savings because we weren't using our buses, a small amount of fuel. The other was a small amount of energy savings because we weren't in the buildings. Mainly it was insurance. We're self-insured. And so we see fluctuations. We work with an actuary to do an assessment about what we need to shore up in our budget to be able to cover any next year, and we do a many-year look. So it was unique this year. We were lower than what we had anticipated before the pandemic, and then even lower when people weren't going to the doctor at the end of the year during the lockdown. So we did inform the board, but it was brief and it was during a lot going on, that at the time there was a $3.5 million surplus that we requested to set aside in reserves. It was voted on by the city council for the specific intent of reserves, which was there were four purposes. One was for health insurance, the capitated rate. So it's getting us up to the required amount that we have to set aside legally as a self-insured organization to cover those fluctuations, as well as additional funding, because in the past we floated a little higher than the assessment, just to cover for that potential. And then we would use those surplus funds to pay for other things at the end of the year. Well, this year we said, let's rightfully fund it and put aside a reserve that's high so that we can account for the fluctuations, but properly budget for things like curriculum. So it's getting up to the corridor, which is the legally required corridor, and then putting a little more aside because it's prudent to do so and we're allowed to do so. And the council voted on that use, which is considered a one-time use because you never want to use reserves for operations. It's not fiscally prudent. You build yourself a bigger hole. It's just not good. The second thing that they voted on using those funds was for special education reserve. Similarly, as you all know, there's a certain amount of predictability in our special ed population and needs, and there's some unpredictability. So what you want to do is budget for the predictability with a cushion, and then you set aside a reserve for those one-time things, and the council agreed to set up this new reserve for us. The third was information technology projects. We already have a reserve for IT. This was paying it back because the 1273 that the city had given us for the enrollment increase a year ago was actually our own funds from that reserve. And so we were refunding that IT reserve back up to more appropriate levels, because we do have some one-time projects that are just startup in nature. So for example, a finance and HR system that we're launching this year you pay maintenance in the perpetuity, but this year there's an investment in, configuring the system and getting trained in it. So those reserves were not intended to be part of our budget. Part of our operational budget.
Thanks, Courtney. It really helps to understand that those are one-time funds, because I think, part of my concern in watching this unfold for the last few years, and, I certainly appreciate, Mr. Russo, what you're saying about the situation that we're all in. My concern is just that we seem to be digging a hole that we're not going to be able to get ourselves out of. And I don't want to see that happen to our schools, because that is the lifeblood of our community. It's really important, I think, that we be able to support the students and to support the schools in the ways that are going to drive us forward. One thing I do want to just comment on Mr. Ginelli's earlier comment there and add to that. I think some education on this would go a long way, especially as we learned at the meeting the other night. The Career Academy, and I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Casimiro, because this is a brilliant concept. This is a brilliant concept, and she is making this come to life for us and for our community. And she deserves a tremendous amount of recognition for doing that work on her weekends, on her evenings, in her mornings before she's starting the school day. This is the potential to be such a boon for the community. And she mentioned, and Kara, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I think you said it was $8 million in tourism that Tennessee was seeing.
Right. The Academies of Nashville, since they started, for such interest in it as a national model, has generated over $8 million in just giving the tours and hosting other school districts to come to see. So there's definitely some opportunity there.
Yeah, and I would just point that out because I think that's important for our leaders to know. They may not be aware of it, and that's something that, if we were able to move this project forward and fund it the way that it should be funded, and that includes the building as well as the programming and, the staffing for that building, that's something that could be an economic boom for our city if we were to become the flagship establishment for the Northeast. So I just want to echo Mr. Ginelli's comment that I think, bringing this information before the entire city council, I think would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Any other questions? Yes.
I'll just briefly share the little presentation that I did just to remind people. So I just wanted to respond to Rich's point that the council, in a normal year, we would have provided a book to the city council and we were doing it electronically. They did ask today for a book, which we did print out, and we were able to provide some of those schedules that we went over in the workshop. So they are, if they look through the book, it's section 3, and they can become familiar with our modified request and how the ESSER money drove down the 13 to the 9, not the 9 further down. And what that means multi-year, and I'll just very briefly share my screen for the budget presentation. Okay. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So basically what this says is our original request, as Kevin mentioned, was 13.3. We modified by utilizing about 3.9 of ESSER 1 and 2 funds. I'm sorry, I should say ESSER 2 and 3. That's 12 million over the next 4 years when you look at the multi-year. So it's over a third of our ESSER money that we dedicated to these operational requests, when it's really, it's intended to support the learning loss, social emotional needs of our students and get kids back 5 days. So the mayor's proposal, as Kevin mentioned, added 1.25 or 9%. And our main priority in the use of the ESSER funds will be to bring students back to school 5 days a week. So this was our original ask with the detail. And our modified ask, we paid for the social emotional supports and some portion of the curriculum programming and a portion of the ESLL and the learning loss summer school with the ESSER money in our proposal. And what that did is, if the city just funded us, what we showed the budget workshop group on Monday night, at an increase of 1.72% per year, which is what they've done on average for the last 10 years. And this is just assuming no funds in 22, because when we did the workshop, we didn't know what the mayor was going to provide. That would leave us a $30 million gap based on the current needs. because as you can see here, the ESSER money drops off in fiscal 2026. So it's not something that is a sustainable strategy. It's not something that we should count on. It's something that if we gave an example here, so Dr. Sal also asked me to show, if the city were to give us a portion of this need even this year, it could be a more modest build towards the future to mitigate some of that drop off in the future for the things that we felt as though we needed to do. So this would be more modest, where I'm pointing now increases over time. And even this is also just showing, because they mentioned the Alliance funding of 14 million. Alliance is part of the ECS, 30 odd million that was going to grow to 54, that we have about 37 million of that now. Every year we get 2.7 more. And the governor's proposing, or 2.17, I apologize, roughly, because it gets adjusted every year for our population. But get us to that yesterday's dollars, like 10 years from now. So this is just showing the governor's proposal. If we froze that also and waited, that further complicates the problem. And the city mentioned that we have the 14 million. That 14 million is already spoken for K teachers, for ESL teachers, for our data assessment group. I mean, every piece of the Alliance 14 is spoken for. So we talk about the increment, when we talk about the additional funding. And so if, for example, the city didn't freeze it, but put us where we should be, that could offset some of that if we talked about it in that way. So we're doubly challenged here. And building up to this if things don't change, which is in 2026. So, and this just showed that when we looked at it over time, on average over like the last 10 years, the city has given us on average 1.72%, which, that's just a fact. And then this just shows, because people keep talking about the high number for the coronavirus relief funds, but we wanted to show you that we have coronavirus. It's the first one is the relief funds. Those are to be spent this year. The ESSER 1 money ends actually in fiscal 2023, but this is a proposed schedule for how we could spread it out. So you could see that if we were to spend 4.6 this year, which is the estimated amount, 13 next year, 13 the following year, 9, it goes down to 1.09 because you only have until September in fiscal 2025 to spend the ESSER 3. And again, this is just projected. So the total funding related to coronavirus relief is about 41 million. It's a lot, of which 36.59 is future dollars if we schedule it out this way. And we dedicated about a third of that, you can see here, in our proposed budget to support those operational things that we asked for in our new budget. So we, in good faith, did do a lot of commitment of those funds where we could. There's certain things like teachers that we need that are just not eligible to be utilized in ESSER funding. So that's just the way it looks. Like, it drops off in fiscal 2025. We don't want to build ourselves a place where we're going to be challenged, by using just fully ESSER money for operational needs when it comes to the year we need the academy. We want to grow to that. And so it was really encouraging in a lot of ways to hear the community interest. It's encouraging to hear Dr. Casimiro talk about the academy. It's encouraging to hear the passion that people have. And we're just excited to get out there and continue to educate people. So with that, I'll stop. And I thank everybody for your comments.
Mrs. Cooper, I'd like to mention something. Courtney, I thank you for all your hard work, and I see that what you sent over to the council people, including what you just demonstrated to us, was about 103 pages of data, which is a few nights worth of reading to those that are concerned. But the lead sheet, I think the lead sheet would be the multi-year sheet to start with. And as Kevin said the other night, we are, or you are, educators. And I think in this short period of time, it's up to us to take that 100, not the 103, but the summary pages, and make known what those numbers are. And then basically, perhaps more important, the impact of why we need those, and also the impact is what happens if we don't get them. As you're talking and I'm thinking, I'm just trying to come up with some sort of a time period or a day where the possibility of a quick workshop. I know Monday and Tuesday of next week, the council and you guys are on vacation, but the council has scheduled for Tuesday, and I'm not sure that if they had something Monday, so perhaps later we can try to figure out a day, if need be, between Thursday and Friday, if that could be rushed. I really feel it's important to get the high points and the important points of what you've just demonstrated and what we're trying to show across to a cross-section of the council people. I do feel that there are many people on the council that are supportive of us, as well as there are many that, are not more conservative. So, we'll have to put, and to Joe's point, yes, what happened historically, is what it is, but I keep saying the wheel that squeaks the loudest gets the oil, and there's got to be a day of reckoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Janella. Any other comments?
Yeah. You can't get blood out of a stone.
I get blood out of you.
Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. That is all from us. Thank you, Courtney.
Okay. Do you have anything else on the superintendent report?
No, that is it for the superintendent report this evening.
I think, I know in our package for information, the overview of the healthy food certificates, I'm quite sure there's no action on that, but just to take it and read it for information. And I would assume that it will be on the next agenda. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So are there any committees reports? Or any,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Britton asked me to give a brief report from Sites and Facilities. He apologized for not being able to be here.
Okay, go ahead.
Sites and Facilities met last week. The main function and the main thing that we did was review the preliminary draft ed specs for the Career Academy. We had a good discussion. Everybody on the committee was supportive of what's going on, supportive at least in draft form, the preliminary, at least moving forward with the ed specs. We asked the architect and the administration to carry forward, keep up the work they're doing on it, and hopefully we'll have something in more detail, something more final that Sites and Facilities can review, approve, and send to the entire board. That was the primary thing we did at that meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Busey.
Thank you.
No. Before we move on, and we're moving on at the end of our agenda, I personally would like to thank all the board members, because this has been, to me, a very rough and difficult year ever since last year. And most of you that was here, we met all during the summer, trying to keep the community informed. And I didn't hear any of you complain. And I know some of you, have working obligations, and some of us are not working. But, we came and we did what we were supposed to do as elected officials. And as a board chair, I just would like to say thank you so very much. I'm going to do the chairperson report, and it's going to be very brief. I am pleased to be able to update you on our search for our new superintendent. As a board, we have had many conversations about the upcoming process, and together we decided to retain an outside search consultant to assist us. I appointed a working subcommittee to review a long list of educational search consultants. This group will work hard to narrow the list and review the proposals from a number of firms who have best met our needs. The full board will interview a small number of them, and we will formally retain one firm. We are excited to work with consultants who will experience thoughtfulness and high regards, and will help to focus us in our search. I will bring you updates at each board meeting over the next couple of weeks, and hope that we as a board can work together to bring a new superintendent into this district. So that's where we are with the superintendent search. Okay. Seeing no other questions, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Kath. Yes.
Excuse me, I did receive some additional public participation. I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention if you wanted me to share that.
How many do you have, Carol?
There's 4.
Okay, go. If they're not a whole thing, you know.
Okay. Your discussion, would you like me to read them?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, the first one is from Maria Sorrentino. Hello, I'm a Danbury resident, a taxpayer, had 4 children attend the Danbury Public Schools. They were successful and 2 had learning disabilities and went into college. I would like to correct one parent that claimed that middle school has students from other school districts and the tech school is state run. Also, my thesis for my master's degree was on charter schools. These are facts, and I will send citations to anyone who wants them. Most charter schools are autonomous of the Board of Education directives. The charter school model was based on the parochial school model. The students wear uniforms, and they are not required to provide free meals. The teachers of charters are also not required to have a certificate in education. The most successful charters do have to provide SPED, ELL, or bilingual programs. This is why they excel. They have what is known as a skim and purge system. That means if a student cannot keep up with the curriculum, the student is asked to go back to a public school. My daughter was a teacher in a charter school in New Orleans, and it was shut down after 3 years. The teachers were not paid well, and they rarely stayed longer than a year. A private charter school does not have to follow the Common Core, and many are backed by corporations that are about making money. The Walden Foundation, Walmart owners made a profit putting students into below par buildings. She taught in the basement with exposed pipes and mold. It was horrendous. Kindly research the most successful charter schools and you will find out that many do not represent students of color or low income, and those students are required to keep a high GPA. The lottery requires parents to invest many hours of volunteer service, and if they cannot keep up, the students are also asked to leave. Those single parents or parents that have 2 jobs cannot provide unreasonable volunteer hours. Many charters do not have physical ed, art, or music department either. The next one is from Evan Fernandez. Good afternoon. My name is Evan Fernandez, and I am an ACE graduate. Thinking back on the time I spent at the Alternative Center for Excellence, I am overwhelmed with gratitude. I was very lucky to have had the opportunity and option to find a school that was able to teach me in a way that felt accessible and fun. My freshman and sophomore year, I attended Danbury High. However, I quickly discovered that my personal learning style was not compatible with the way I was being taught. Luckily, the Alternative Center for Excellence accepted me, and they were immediately able to help me in a way DHS couldn't. I often think back to my friends at DHS who also wanted access to find a school that worked for them, but unfortunately, they were not able to have the same experience as me. Again, I emphasize how lucky I was to get randomly accepted to attend ACE, but as you know, the school is only able to help so many students, and there are a few other options in Danbury. I hope that soon in the future, Danbury students will be able to choose between charter schools, magnet schools, alternative schools, Montessori-style schools, or traditional schools based on what is best for their individual needs. I hope in the future these options aren't limited to students lucky enough to win a lottery. Thank you for your time. Have a great evening. Gabriela Perez. Hello, my name is Raquel, and I have 2 children. My first son currently attends an elementary school in Danbury, and my second is 2 years old. I love both my boys dearly and felt lucky to be able to send them to a school in a district where the students are so diverse. I'm sure they will not only find friends from their own culture, but also learn about a variety of cultures and become more socially conscious children. My only qualm with Danbury is that I feel this plethora of diversity does not extend to teachers and staff at these schools. As I've recently moved, I've been able to experience the demographics of 2 different schools and found that they are both pretty similar. While I still believe my son will receive a great education, I still wish they were able to be exposed to teachers of various backgrounds so that all students are able to see themselves reflected in their role models. Please take this opportunity to think of how something that that simple can change a child's perspective on education. Thank you for your consideration. And the last one is from Adana Bosworth. Hello, I'm a Danbury resident, a taxpayer, had 4 children attend the Danbury Public Schools. They were successful and had 2 learning disabilities and still went on to college. I would like to correct one parent that claimed that middle school magnet has students from other districts and inform that the individuals that detect school is state run. Also, my thesis for my master's degree was on charter schools. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I read this already. My apology. Okay, we are all set. That is the last one.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for taking time to submit their comments. If there's no other questions, I entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Moved by Mr. Silver, seconded by?
I'll second Gladys. This is Kate.
Okay, seconded by Kate. All in favor, could I hear aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is so carried. Thank you. Good
See
night.
everybody tomorrow.